The closeness of the community has been the most important part, I think, of here, because it's mostly senior citizens that are living on limited incomes. I counted when we did our latest list of names and residents, and I think we have 8 kids that live here, and that's all. So that's why I enjoy the kids screaming over at the church during the camp, because it's fun to watch them play. But the older people are the ones that I try to focus on, because you see an ambulance and then nobody's there for a few days. And if they were living someplace else, no one would know that. So we keep an eye out for each other. We actually have street captains, so that there's 50 units, so we have 5 captains who are responsible for 10 residents. And when something's going on, or we're sending a card and we want signatures, or we're going to have a different day for the trash collection because the trash man is sick, these captains get on the phone and call their 10 people and make sure that they know what's going on. We don't have a lot of participation at our board meetings, although they're always invited, because it's dark and they don't go out in the night. So we do a lot of home visits, where we'll go knock on the door if we haven't seen somebody for a couple of days. Everybody okay? And they've gotten so too, I'm stressing, do not climb a ladder, people. And, some of these old ladies, by the time they're done, they're 3 feet 2, and they can't reach the cupboards. So, or the smoke detector goes off because they forgot that they were cooking something on the stove and it won't stop, and it's hurting my ears. They get calls like that all the time. And fortunately, I'm retired. I'm home most of the time. I go, or my husband goes, or I'll call somebody if they need strength. Then I know who they are and who's home and when they're not home. And that's a very good way to keep people close.
My question for you, Pam, is can you tell us about the land use for your solar project and the partnerships you built around that?
Well, to start off with, that lovely church where everybody's parked now used to have a minister named Bruce. He's been replaced with Greg, but he's just as nice. He's the one who made coffee this morning. And they own this land that our solar panels are on. But he had been an integral part of us becoming a co-op, the Reverend, telling us we could use his church for our meetings. He was just, because he was watching out for the people of our community. He saw that they were older and, had more chances of having problems than a nice, healthy young family. So he gave us that acre of land for our solar panels as a gift. We didn't even have to pay for it.
I think you paid $1.
I guess you have to pay at least $1.
And do you mind, Pam, if I introduce Jeannie Oliver?
No.
Who I know many of you have
met.
met.
Use that, so it's on the...
Jeannie has worked super closely with Mascoma Meadows, and Jeannie, could you maybe tell us just a little bit about that the project here?
Yeah.
Sure. So I think we started our tour today with Sarah saying how the Community Loan Fund got started, and the idea behind it was neighbors helping neighbors. And so we've heard a little bit about how this community is really about neighbors helping neighbors, right down to the land being gifted by their neighbors. But this project is about the wider community as well. So there are a lot of partnerships involved, a lot of neighbors involved, sort of near and far. So this project originally started with Rock USA, actually reaching out to the Vermont Law School Energy Clinic and saying, hey, we see an opportunity for solar in resident-owned communities. Can you write a guide? And I should back up. I'm Jeannie. I work at Rock, New Hampshire now. I'm the new senior director. I came from Vermont Law School's Energy Clinic 2.5 months ago. So I'm kind of speaking in my law school capacity when I talk about this. And we said, hey, it's a little bit hard to do a guide. We haven't done one of these projects yet. And the regulations are different depending on what state and what community you're working in. But I had a colleague at the time, Krista Shute, who gets a lot of credit for sort of initiating this process. She had been working with the New Hampshire legislature to get legislation in place for low moderate income community solar projects. And she saw an opportunity to do a project. And she reached out to Rock, New Hampshire, to Tara, and said, hey, what would be a great community to work with to do a solar project? And she immediately said Mascoma Meadows. And I think the reason why they were a prime candidate is because of the relationships that they have. They still have a very productive board. So their governance structure is really solid. People work together really well. This kind of project requires a lot of door knocking, getting everyone in the community involved. And so the law school, working with the Mascoma Meadows board, working with the city of Lebanon, working with Rock, New Hampshire, working with legislators, working with Revision Energy, managed to put this project together. So this solar array is 100 kilowatts AC. It is owned by Revision, kind of, an investment partnership. It is a power purchase agreement model. The community receives credits from Liberty, and those credits are being used to provide each of the households that are participating with a lot rent reduction every month. As many of you know, the cost of electricity has gone up significantly this year, but that also means that the net metering credits have gone up at the same rate. So
I can't really say how many per month because Liberty did something of a project this past year, and the last electric bill I had received was in September of 22, and then I got one in March of 23. So 6 months we went without electric bills, but we also went without electric revenue from our solar project. And my bill, I didn't see too much of a significant change, but my father-in-law's was $2,100 for those 6 months that he did not get a bill. So that's not cheap. So this, in turn, we didn't see anything, and thanks to you, I believe, and Kelly, and whoever got on the phone and started yelling at Liberty about where's their money, we got a check for $17,000. But it has no indication of what we're getting paid per kilowatt, how many kilowatts. It was just a check, no information. So it's good to have a partner that keeps good books, and Liberty's got to work on that. But they said that it went astray because they changed their power provider to Canada. I don't know what that would have to do with it, because everybody else, we got an electric bill for our street lights, our pump house, and a septic system that we have to have a separate pump for, but no resident got one. Now, how can you bill those 3 entities but not the rest? Never got I wrote to the Public Utilities Commission, no response, because I was worried for my people. You get a bill after 6 months, some old lady's going to have a heart attack because the fuel oil went up, groceries went up. They couldn't put any money aside, and people don't like to owe, at least people that age. So I haven't heard anybody died or got upset. So hopefully they were generous with being a little bit of discount because it took them so long. It's actually their fault.
Can we see if I was just going to say, can we see if there's questions?
I forgot to mention one important thing before we move on. This is actually grant funded by what is now the Department of Energy of New Hampshire. It was the first low moderate income community solar grant. We've received for different rocks an additional 3 since this project was put in, and those 3 were fully grant funded. This one was partially grant funded, and so those other 3 are turnkey projects, so the community owns them. Mascoma Meadows has the opportunity to purchase this array, I think next year will be its 6th year.
So there's a lot of little components, and it hasn't been much of an upkeep. It's a little hard to mow underneath, and we try to keep it down because of the ticks, and for that reason. But we do the regular lawnmower there. You have to use the push mower under that one, unless you're really short.
So Pam, I have a question for you. The power purchase agreement is with Mascoma Meadows, the rock, and not with the individual residents.
Right.
It's a single meter then?
It's a single meter, and they read that, and that's what they pay us for. And in turn, we do discounts on the rent for the members who are part of the solar. There are 4 people only that aren't solar project members and why they chose not to participate when there's no cost and you can have your rent decreased. It's crazy.
So just as background, the reason we structured it that way as a lot rent reduction is when this project was installed, the way group net metering worked, there was no on-bill crediting option. And so we were really concerned at the law school about that check coming in and then being distributed to each household as being counted as income. We didn't want it to be income, and so by administering it as a lot rent reduction, it's a reduction in expenses, and so it doesn't have tax implications. And then we don't want to impose anything on anyone. If you want to participate in solar, awesome. If you don't, that's your choice. And so it's a voluntary opt-in option. Almost everyone opted in.
Yeah.
And so the power purchase agreement, going back to your question, is with the ROC, the cooperative, but each household that wants to participate enters into a group net metering agreement with the cooperative, and that sets out the terms and conditions. Like, I will participate, my obligation,
And we sign it every year.
every year. So there's only really two obligations for the households. One is they have to do an annual income survey, and that's part of the grant agreement with the Department of Energy. And the second one is to receive information when it's available about energy efficiency. Yeah. Some of our other solar projects are structured a little bit differently just because of the law changes with on-bill crediting. So, yeah.
Yeah, how would you structure that today? What are the differences?
Yeah, so our most recent project, which hasn't been installed yet because of supply chain constraints, it's in the town of Conway. That community decided, we gave them the option of either structuring it with some on-bill crediting. So the low moderate income community solar additional net metering credit is only available if you now do on-bill crediting. So we gave them the option of structuring it so that there's minimal on-bill crediting, but they still get a larger check to the co-op like Mascoma Meadows is doing, and then using that for a lot rent reduction, or having it all administered as on-bill credits, and they opted for on-bill credits. It's just administratively more simple. The downside is that it's going to be a bigger credit in the summer and a smaller credit in the winter, so it's a little harder for budgeting. And what we found when we talked with your community early on is that having those consistent lot rent reductions month to month was really desirable, as opposed to something that fluctuates over the year. So, yeah.
Something they can depend on and rely on. It's not up and down. And problem with our revision, not that they haven't done a wonderful job, but with COVID, you know how there was no toilet paper? Well, there were no transistors or transmitters.
The inverters.
Inverters.
So we had an inverter failure on this project 2 summers in a row, which meant that we lost peak production 2 summers in a row, which is really unfortunate. And because they're under warranty, but there was delays in getting the new parts.
So in the case of the turnkey operations where they belong to the ROC, would they have to manage that
Yes.
supply chain issue themselves?
So those communities enter into an operations and maintenance agreement with the installer if they want to. So we have one community in Tilton that has chosen not to, and for now, but they're looking into it, have not had any issues so far. So it's kind of the luck of the draw with your inverters, I think. But yeah, they have that option, and it's not very expensive. Yeah.
It is if they don't work and you lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
We are just beyond 2:00, and I know that was the end time for our bus tour and honoring everybody's time. I want to point that out, and I want to thank Pam for being with us all day. Really,
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
My pleasure.
And Jeannie, thanks for all the great information about solar. And our plan was to get back on the bus and to go to the church, but I'm looking at the lawn between here and the church, and so people should feel free to walk over. But we do have a couple little gifts for trivia winners and for everybody to grab before you leave. So. And Sarah, do you have anything to say last minute?
I don't need a
Thank
present.
you. Thank you so much for spending your day with us. Thank you to Vital Communities. Thank you
for
to
lunch.
New Hampshire Housing. And
And a Olivia.
We can't wait to see you all again, and maybe at the gala in the fall, or 21st of September, or as we load up for the policy season. We're always looking for people to help write letters and explain some of the stuff that's going on that's important. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye, Alan.